She called Hella's best friend, who in turn contacted Hella's lawyer. According to State Police Detective Joseph DeStefano, Hella may have feared for her life.
Helly explained to her attorney that if for some reason she disappeared or wasn't around any longer or something wasn't right, not to take it as being a coincidence, that there was something wrong. And she had asked her attorney, please look into it. That is exactly what had happened. Helly did disappear.
Police questioned Richard Krafts. Though they knew his situation with Hella was rocky, he seemed an unlikely suspect. Besides his day job as a commercial airline pilot, Richard was a town constable, sworn to uphold the law. But as state investigators talked to Hella's friends, suspicions about Richard began to grow.
When people were asking Richard where Helly was, he gave several different answers. At one point he said she was visiting her mother. At another point I believe he said she was visiting her sister. At another point he said he didn't know where she was. Things that weren't consistent with what a husband would say if his wife was missing. That in itself created some suspicion.
Police had enough information to obtain a search warrant of Kraft's house, but not enough to charge Richard with any crime. They still didn't know if this was a criminal investigation or a wild goose chase.
At this point in time, we had no answers. All we had were questions.
They hoped to find some answers in the Krafts' bedroom. By the time they obtained the warrant, the room was virtually empty, apparently to get ready for new carpeting, but perhaps also to disrupt the crime scene. Meanwhile, Richard was on his way to Florida for Christmas, and miles ahead of the police. Something happened here, but had the suspect erased all the evidence? Some of the furniture was discovered in the basement. Before investigators could examine the bedroom, they called in a friend of Hella's to tell them how it was arranged. After the room was back in order, the forensics team found stains on one side of the mattress. Blood spatter expert Henry Lee was called in to interpret them.
The first time when you hit somebody, usually don't produce it. You only can create a wound. When the blood start deposit around the injury area, from the capillary or the vein, now you have pool of blood. The second time you hit it, then you have spatter.
Lee was able to determine from the size and distance the stains spread on the mattress that the blood spattered at medium velocity. That told him a little about the weapon.
We know it's some blunt object, but I cannot tell you that's a hammer, an axe, or flashlight. Could be any type of this blunt object.
One thing Lee and investigators concurred on: they had found the crime scene, and it suggested bloody murder. A faint pattern of blood on Hella and Richard Krafts' mattress was enough to turn up the heat on what was a missing persons investigation. Now, police felt that Hella might be dead and that Richard Krafts had killed her. But the proof was scant, shaky. They were relying more on instinct than evidence. If Mrs. Krafts was killed, where was her body? They'd have to do their homework.
The next level of the investigation was a review of paperwork that we had found in Mr. Krafts' background, particularly his credit card receipts.
On the roster of routine purchases, one line stood out.
We found that Richard Krafts had rented a wood chipper from the Darien Rental Agency in Darien, Connecticut.
Though it seemed like a shot in the dark, DeStefano's sergeant suggested that perhaps Krafts used a wood chipper to eliminate the body. DeStefano was skeptical.
My image is that things like that don't happen. They happen on television, but they don't happen in real life.
He went to Darien Rental to see if it was even possible to use a wood chipper to dispose of a body. The rental agent showed him the chipper that Richard Krafts rented on November 18th, around the same date Hella Krafts disappeared.
Okay, essentially what we have then, we've got all the material being fed in through this end,
Right.
and it's coming in contact with the cutters on the wheel over here.
Yeah, we'll spin it.
Now, about how thick is that wheel?
About 2 inches, yes, sir.
And that's solid steel,
It weighs about 900 pounds.
900 pounds. Those blades, one on either side. So once that wheel gets moving, nothing stops it.
No, not at all.
The only thing that happens is whatever hits that gets cut.
Yeah, if I put steel in there, it wouldn't make any difference. We'd cut it up.
You say that opens up about 12 inches?
About 12
right
inches,
there?
yeah.
So 1,200 RPMs with a
minute.
900-pound piece of metal, two 12-inch blades. No way anything's going to stop that.
Not at all.
Though the massive blade could make short work of anything in its path, the hopper could only accommodate objects up to a foot wide. It would be impractical to dispose of a body that way, but not impossible. It seemed far-fetched. But while DeStefano was investigating the wood chipper, other detectives spoke with town workers to see if anyone had seen anything that might resemble a clue. A utility worker reported he was out in the early morning of November 19th. He saw someone operating what looked to be like a river road adjacent to the Housatonic River. That chance observation propelled an otherwise stalled investigation. Attention shifted to River Road.
When the investigators got to that location, they did in fact find wood chips on the ground. In exploring the area all the more, they found envelopes with Helicraft's return address on them. At this point in time, we had the feeling that we've got something here that's totally out of the ordinary.
Investigators gathered 33 bags of
This
debris
area
from the
is
River
off
Road
limits.
area.
Leave the ship now.
The bags were sent to the police station to be
Okay, this is
by
the gangways.
anything that wasn't a wood chip or a leaf was set aside.
One hair, and not knowing what to do with it, we took a bottle. And we put the one hair in the bottle. Continue on, we'd find an object that was harder than wood, but softer than stone. So we felt that we'll start another bottle for items such as these.
Out of the mulch, a grisly scenario was taking shape. Based on these initial findings, a tent was set up to process evidence on site. Konstantin Karasoulis, chief forensic odontologist or dental expert, was called in hopes of locating human dental remains.
We would collect evidence and bring it into a tent, and we would put it through some water, through a filter, and look for things that were human parts.
Circumstantial evidence was piling up. The blood in the bedroom, the wood chipper rental, the unidentified fragments in the wood chips. But there was still no body, and without a body, there was no crime. They needed to find something more definite. Investigators knew they had to turn the case around, or a killer would walk. While evidence of a crime